Hey, what's up guys, it's Sick, and today I want to just do an overview of MQ2Berzerker. So, let's load it for the first time, okay? So we're going to do a /plugin MQ2Berzerker, and it's got the Z in there. We're going to load this bad boy, okay? We pop up the window, it says everything that we have, just like all the other chapter this name class plugins. It says everything I have and everything that I'm missing. This is one of my newer groups. So you see I have a lot of rank 1s. So this is something I could definitely spend some time on and go and get rank 2s of all the stuff I'm missing, particularly some of the important stuff. I mean, Avenging Flurry Discipline, you know, if I can get that rank 3, that would be pretty sweet. But currently I'm not missing anything, so I'm happy. I have my Heroic Rageblade coat added for my offensive. You know, there's kind of some diminishing value to that coat these days, and you might get, you know, better value using other stuff, but I still have that in there. The modern coats that you get, like this is the tier 3 TOV crafted. It gives you a absorbing melee damage incoming, so it's not giving you anything offensive. So you'll see folks using, you know, either the heroic coat or EOK ROS. You know, clicky for their offensive burn. Anyway, so let's hop into this. So first what we'll do is we'll go over some of the chat with this name class plugin stuff specifically for Berserker, and then we'll just do a little talk about Berserkers in general. I get a lot of PMs, a lot of questions. My Berserkers are trash cans. I don't know what I'm doing wrong. Please help. I literally get a couple of these a day, every day, 7 days a week. So I figure it's probably time to go back and redo a little video talking specifically about Berserkers. So while I'm doing this, I'm just going to do my little dude, Zerk mode 1. I'm going to put him in 1 so he starts helping out the group. But let's talk about the settings tab. So it's pretty straightforward. This is how I run my group. My camp radius right now is 80. I normally leave that at 60, but I was doing a camp earlier that 80 worked out a little bit better. You know, the camp radius is your red circle. This is the range at which you're going to assist your MA when mobs come in. So, you know, I usually keep my DPS's camp radius a little larger than my tanks. So I think my tanks right now is either 45 or 60. So my DPS a little bit larger. So once the mob comes in the circle of my tank, the tank's going to run to it. And then because my DPS is larger, if that mob is standing in a weird position, my DPS are still going to run over to it and still going to start fucking it up. I leave use AoE turned off on my Berserkers because I mez. You can turn this on and they'll do crazy AoE DPS, but they'll end up, you know, breaking mez and all that jazz. But this is how I run my crew. There's nothing super special about it. I do auto assist at 100. The chat with this name class plugins are pretty clever, where you can run 100 and it's not gonna cause you a bunch of headaches. But I don't like waiting until the mobs are 98 health or whatever from my tank before they start banging on them, especially as mob health increases over the years and expansions. I don't want to wait, so I have it set for 100. I have burn all named set. I run 2 Berserkers, so I use Alliance with Force Alliance on. It doesn't trigger very often, but anytime it does, it's an extra little bonus, which is pretty great. I keep switch with MA on. This means anytime my tank, my MA, switches targets, the Berserker is going to immediately switch with him. Now, you don't always want that. Sometimes you want them to not switch with MA, right? So like a TOV mission, if maybe you want to have the tank swap back to the dude in Kale, the Avatar War, and you want to leave your other dudes on the regular guy, you don't need to have switch with MA. So that way they stay on the target that you initially gave them and they started fighting. Use Intimidate, Stick, Battle Leap, Braxy, Frenzied, Retaliation. I use all of these on. Intimidate is the AA that it increases the damage taken and stuns mobs. Now the rank 1 does a fear, but we actually don't have it use the fear portion of it. But this, you know, the rank 1 version of it. But this one, this is great. You really want to use this. It increases the damage taken by Frenzy by 30 seconds, and then it can, you know, seize the targets 3 or fewer levels higher than you with fear, leaving them unable to react. Now, it says seize them with fear it's still considered a fear ability. So if the mobs are immune to fear, you'll get the message they're immune to fear. But it doesn't make them run away. It just seizes the target. So they just stand still because they're scared. At higher ranks anyway. Stick, same stuff I talked about before. So we nav to the mob and then we stick to it. If you're in a dungeon or you're doing stuff where your dude's getting stuck on a wall or whatever, you can click that use stick off, and then he'll just nav to the mob and start banging on it. Battle leap. Now battle leap. Okay. We're still going to use battle leap to make sure you have the buff. And at higher ranks, you get a buff that lasts forever. So you're going to use it at least once. Toggling this off means you're not going to use it to try and reposition, because we use it in the plugin to reposition if you are rooted or blind. Blind is something that a regular player would use. The plugins obviously can still navigate to the mob if they're blind, so it doesn't really matter. But if you have use frenzied on, this is use frenzied resolve, and that's the ability that'll root your berserkers in place. Now, it does crazy damage, so you want to use it, but sometimes you'll be rooted just out of the range of a mob. And there's an AA drawn to battle, or excuse me, drawn to blood, and this will gravitate you to your target if you're under the effects of blinding fury or frenzied resolve. And then we also use battle leap to try and get to the mob if we can't otherwise hit it. Braxy. Braxy is super duper important, muy importante. This increases the damage of up to 8 opponents within a 35-foot radius. To take melee attacks 17% up to 70 hits, and 2% chance to trigger bullshit which seizes them, leaving them unable to react. Now this doesn't do damage, so this isn't going to break mez. And sometimes you may not want to use it. You don't want to fucking aggro other shit. So we have this as a toggle. I leave it on. The way that Braxy works, you really want to hit Braxy and then follow it up with your Daiko Dissident ability. And then use Retaliation. Retaliation's the ability that they get, that if they get punched, they can retaliate and do damage back to the mob. So we just have that as a toggle. Not super duper important, so it's not something I really worry about. Anyway, these are the settings. Just kind of what Berserker we have the option for customization. Berserkers aren't super complicated, but there are some things you really need to know, otherwise it's going to be a little confusing. So we'll hop into that stuff. And I have some notes, so I'm going to keep looking in that direction at my notes. But let's see what we got here. Okay, Berserkers in general. So we went over Frenzied Resolve. They're going to root themselves in place. That's pretty annoying. We have the Battle Leap and Drawn to Blood to try and get them back in place. Berserkers also do shit where they blind themselves. Okay, so if you're looking at your Berserker and he goes blind and you're like, why is my screen black? Everything's coming to an end. Berserkers, this is part of their trade-off. They're pretty face roll. They just kind of smash stuff really hard. But there's trade-offs. So they're root in place, they blind themselves. If you notice, my Berserker's also locked at 89% health. Now they have several ability lines where they need to be lower on health, lower than 100%, to be able to use those abilities. So in the early levels, that can feel really, really painful because the health limiters, Ritual Scarification and Open Wound, they have a percentage or health value depending on which one is greater, and that can cause issues if your dudes are naked or whatever, where all of a sudden you are super low health because of how those function. Okay, your epic. Where is my epic? Epic. This motherfucker right here. Strike of Savagery. Fills your weapon with power of fury, increasing your critical hit chance and your accuracy. Now, the chance to critical melee, 300%, and that's pretty good. So, you want this. You want this real bad. The amount of people I speak to that say their Berserkers are struggling a little bit and they don't understand why, that have not gone and got your epic, you need to go get your epic. It is very important. EverQuest is a game of inches, and particularly, in the group game, those inches really, really add up. So, again, the purpose of this video is just to talk about some of those inches. A good portion of this is my, my opinion and how I run my stuff. I am not claiming to be an expert on anything. I didn't know anything about Berserkers until I started hanging out with chat and chat with this name with MQ2Berzerker. Retired my 20-year-old Necro to run a Berserker, and now I run 2, and I'm a absolute fan of the class, particularly because they're low maintenance. They do what they do, and they just do it constantly without a bunch of effort, and their burn damage is absolutely significant. So let's see. Zerkers are takers, okay? So I talk about this a lot. You have classes that are takers, classes that are givers, and then classes that are kind of in between, right? So an in-between class would be something like a beastlord. Beastlords are in between. They take a little bit, but they also give a lot. So they're good to kind of supplement in. You really want to have a good balance of givers and takers in your group. So for me, I have 2 berserkers and a beastlord with a bard for the CC and the ADPS. Berserkers don't give a whole lot, right? So their synergy line gives a little bit, right? So combat ability, 100% chance to trigger Fury synergy on all group members within 100-foot radius, increases their chance to landing a crippling blow by 30% for 18 seconds. Now this is great. This means that each berserker is going to be helping the other berserker, okay? But outside of that, they don't have a whole lot of stuff that they're helping other dudes with, okay? So what this means is, if you have a group of 5 berserkers or 6 berserkers, sure, they're going to be doing things like alliance and they're going to be doing that synergy buff, but you're actually losing out of some of their cap by not providing them more stuff, since they're takers. They want ADPS. So, bards, shaman, beastlords, rangers, a bunch of other classes that give buffs and give stuff to make other dudes do more damage. Berserkers love that shit. They gobble that up, and that's why I run the group the way that I run. I've been working on MQ2 Shaman, which I'll probably start rolling with a shaman in my group as we finish up cleric and that gets officially released. So I'll be able to get even more ADPS when I add that shaman to the group and I start getting those shaman buffs. But Zerkers are takers. You need to give them stuff. You need to provide them stuff. You don't have to have anything. You don't have to have a bard. Enchanters work just fine if you prefer kind of the stability and reliability of the toolbox that enchanters have. There's absolutely nothing wrong with that. For me personally, I prefer the ADPS of the bard and some of the other stuff bard has, like their double invis and all that kind of bullshit. Let's talk about gear. So my dudes are still fairly new. They're finally starting to come around. By my dudes, I mean this particular crew that I've been rolling with. I made these at 85 when the free 85s were out, and I've been just kind of progressing with them to do all the content over again. So as you can see, I still have some TOV tier 1 shit, and I'm slowly getting them TOV tier 3 stuff. I'm missing a bunch of AUGs and type 3s and stuff. This particular Zerker, this is my primary Zerker 1. He only has 1,300 decks. I really want that to be a little closer to 2,000 decks, or excuse me, 2,000 H decks, but it is what it is for now. And if you're wondering why I'm killing where I'm killing, I'm working on some TBL progression, which I'll explain why I'm doing TBL progression here in a little bit. But so the gear is pretty self-explanatory, right? So you have your class stuff for your 8 visible pieces, the Valium infused stuff. So personally, because I'm cheap, I just go from tier 1 and then I wait until I can get, the tier 3 shit. But I still have a bunch of tier 1 stuff. My Power Stone is out. Oh no, it's not out. It just looks out. I use 36 delay weapons. Okay? Now, if you're low AA or low ADPS in your group, you might get a better performance with like a 32. I think the 32s are the piercers. For me personally, with the group that I run, I get much better performance out of the higher delay, particularly because I stack H decks and I have that high accuracy. Obviously, with a higher delay, you miss more, it's going to be more painful. With that high accuracy, you're hitting those big damages. Hopefully you're getting like double hits, triple hits. You're getting your big procs, and it's just doing ridiculous damage. I got lucky. I happened to get an ice encrusted. This is the chase item. The chase 36 weapon. Very happy with this. So you can try out different weapons and see what suits you. For me personally, again, I'm very insistent. I like the higher delay. That works out for me very, very well, and I highly recommend that. Type 5s, again, H-Dex. These things add up so much. You get so much more of your heroic stats from Type 5s than you do Type 7s. So, for example, the TOV H-Dex are all 30. So you have 30 times all of these, or excuse me, 70. You have 70 times all of these slots. That's a lot of freaking H-Dex. The TBL ones were 55, right? And I forget what the math was. I used to have a chart that I'd keep, but that adds up pretty significantly. So spend time. You know, the coin rewards you get kind of suck from the TOV missions, but getting these H-Dex Type 5s, very, very important. And another thing that's very, very important too is making sure you have a base damage for your two-hander. This happens to be the Chilled Bauble. It's 22 base damage. That is massive, massive. You know, there are better ones out there, obviously. If you can't afford just the baseline one, you know, there's always Conflagrant. You can easily get, you know, an 18, 19, 20, a 21 or 22 in this case. I think the best one for group gear is 24. I could be mistaken on that. But again, game of inches. Take anything you can. If you can only get like almost a full inch, take the almost a full inch, and you know, you'll progress later. Everything gets a little bit easier as you give it a little more. Let's talk about power source. So the TBL melee power source is Enchanted Dragon Scale. This is ROS TBL, right? And the TOV one is called the Velium Assaulter source, but that's what you want to use. Now, I'll even just keep it equipped if I'm if it's depleted. But you know, you want to have the extra planar potential shards in all of your 8 gear slots. I don't usually put them until I get tier 3. So like this, you know, my wrists, they're both empty because they're not tier 3 yet. But as soon as they're tier 3, I'm gonna pop that bad boy in there. You don't have to have this, but again, game of inches. If you have the luxury where you're getting extra power sources or whatnot, you want to keep something in there. I normally worry about my tank having a power source and my berserkers, and eventually my beasts, and then my cleric for the heal one, and my bard gets a power source very, very last because I want him to have a melee one as well. But I'm not gonna give my bard a melee one over my berserkers, right? If I'm struggling and I don't have enough stuff, like this particular group here is still kind of shitty, so I don't have a whole lot of extra stuff to go around, so I'm just gonna leave them doing their thing and juice them up as much as possible, because again, they're takers, right? The bard how I use it in my group is primarily a giver, so I'm not gonna give him shit that it could go to somewhere else, because I want that balance of givers and takers. Okay, so I remembered after I finished up the other video, there was something else I wanted to talk about, which was tribute. I use MQ2 Tribute Manager to activate my tribute, and it's not something I always do, especially with new tunes, if you can't afford having stuff to sacrifice for favor. But when you do, I throw this in there. I have no idea if this is the best stuff to use. This is just what I personally use, okay? So I use Eyes of the Hunter. It's going to give you an accuracy boost. So with the 8 ranks of it at a 350 cost, increases accuracy by 120 points. I do Fury of Combat, increases chance to perform a flurry of attacks, which is up to 2 additional attacks upon a successful primary slot triple attack by 6%. Hero's Deafness, this is just H-Dex 26. It's not a lot, but whatever, that's actually pretty high cost for only 26 H-Dex, but whatever. Second Chance, if you die, you'll come back. And then Vengeful Aura, getting an additional 60 attack. Again, game of inches, not super duper important, and I wouldn't sweat it if you can't afford stuff for favor, but now with the increased favor cap and the amount of no trade like bullshit that just drops and rots, it's pretty easy just to keep enough to do that. And with the MQ2 Tribute Manager, I have it set to just to do it on names, and then it keeps it on until it fades, and then it doesn't re-up it until you fight a named again. So you're not just gonna sit roaming around burning tribute forever. So all right, back to the video. Axe components, man. Okay, we have it outputting if you don't have your axe components. Now, this is another one of those things where if you don't know a whole lot about Berserkers, you're like, I don't want to throw shit. Why the fuck am I throwing stuff, right? Like, I'm not even putting them in my range slot. Like, I still have my Jungle Raptor in my range slot here. Well, we have abilities that actually use them. So we need the axe components. So you have Axe of the Vindicator here, and they actually do get used up for particular abilities. Some abilities require you to have them even though they don't consume them, and other abilities do consume them. So we need those axe components, and if you're getting spammed in your plugin output that you're missing those axe components, that's because your ass needs to go and get some. So don't skimp on that. Again, it's another one of those weird things about Berserkers. Between rooting themselves, blinding themselves, the health lock, and then what the fuck do I need axe components? I'm not a ranger. That's a confusing part about some of their AAs, because their AAs have a bunch of stuff that that says that it increases throwing weapons and throwing based skill attacks. So on the surface, if you're not familiar with Berserkers, you're thinking, okay, this is like if they're using a bow, which they don't use bows, but this is like if they're using something in their range slot to do shit, and we're not doing that. I just want to go up and hit them with my axe or my hammer or my stick or whatever the fuck I'm hitting them with, candy cane. So you may overlook this, but a bunch of their stuff is they're actually throwing axes, even though you don't see it and it doesn't look like they're doing it. So on the surface, this can be very confusing. Okay, before we get into more AA stuff, let's talk about some of the little things that get overlooked a lot. In your special tab, stuff like this, Aura of Rage. Okay, so I have this 3 of 3, and you get the 3 of 3 from the fabled Shrunken Goblin Skull Earring. Okay, you can get rank 2 of it actually by the regular Shrunken Goblin Skull Earring. This guy pops anytime, and you'll get rank 2 of 3 out of that. But rank 3 of 3, just increases your attack power by 25 points. And again, game of inches. So this may not sound like a lot, but a little bit of effort. Like if you're on Furionavi, FV, whatever the fuck you want to call it. If you're on FV, you can go buy this in the bazaar, or you can use it and then trade it to another dude, and they can click it, and you can just hand it around and click it for everybody. So stuff like this is very important. So spending a little bit of time and taking a look at your stuff. Again, my group is a little crappy. You can see how low a bunch of this stuff is. Vitality, Fortitude, Resolution from hero stuff, 5 out of 35. Struggling a little bit. All of this adds up over time, and the dudes who are just absolutely demolishing content, the raiders, the top min and maxed, they have all of these checkboxes marked. Even like Berserker, you don't really need, you're not thinking, okay, I need protection, form of protection, and that comes from a few specific items, that particular thing. But if you're trying to min max your dudes, you want to spend some time and get that. This isn't going to give you DPS, obviously, but it increases your resistance and all that stuff. So it may keep you alive, which then allows you to do damage and be good. Okay, let's talk about some AA stuff. I'm not going to go over all of the AAs because there are a lot of AAs, but there's a few things that are pretty important that I just want to kind of touch on real quick, okay? So in particular, let's talk about the synergy. I mentioned this earlier about giving your group the chance to land a crippling blow by 30%. I always try and max synergy first. Now, in MQ2Berzerker and the Chat with This Name class plugins for the DPS characters, we have them using the ability that matches the rank of your synergy, okay? So if I only had rank 11 of this, and it's not doing the TOV, it's not giving focus for the TOV level ability, which is 111. If it's not going to give us that, we're going to use the other ability, because that chance to land a crippling blow by 30% is fucking huge for the rest of the group, and including yourself. So we kind of smartly do that, but you want to max this out as soon as possible. Now, since we're talking about how the AA abilities and what provides focus for TOV abilities, you can run into a situation where if your current focus does not match the level and abilities that you use, particularly going from, let's say you were max AA for TBL, and then you go into TOV, and you're using TOV abilities, but you don't have the focus to match, you may be losing something like, 13%, 10%, you know, whatever it is, like this 30%. So if you didn't have the rank that triggered on your Acts of Rekatok, oh no, that's 110. What am I looking for? Focus. Okay, so these Vindicating Frenzy, this is 111, right? So we were just looking at this. Now, if I only had rank 7 of this, I think it's rank 7, it only gives the focus to Demolishing Frenzy and Mangling Frenzy, and it does not give the focus to the Vindicating Frenzy. So you're gonna get 15% bonus on this one, but you're not getting any bonus on this one, right? And so that's pretty fucking crappy. So some folks are like, I don't know why I'm doing less damage, and it has to do with DBG were not very, you know, player-friendly, player-oriented when they decided to do the increases. My personal opinion, it should kind of be a linear increase. It should be, you know, I don't know, 8, 10, 12, whatever % of all of that line, and not specifically the spell. So you take a DPS hit once you gain levels, but that's how it is. We already talked about intimidation a little bit. That's important. Other passive stuff that gives things like Everburn, right? Increases base damage of your frenzies. So by the time you get 14 ranks, it's 40%. Or Frenzied Volley, right? Grants your Rage Volley and Demolishing Axe Throw 60%, another 20% chance as well, throwing attacks by 6% chance to strike your opponent with Frenzied Volley, an additional throwing skill with base damage of thing. You know, all of these things giving you either a percentage of like base damage or additional base damage that's a solid number, or an additional chance to do an additional attack. Those kinds of things. These things add up so much. And if you read this and you're not sure what all of this stuff is, it doesn't sound that important. But it's all pretty important. They do have a bunch of kind of bullshit stuff that's kind of a waste, like, you know, Companions Discipline, Concentration. You know, those are things that I would not out the gate spend my time on. But things like Burst of Power, right? This has 96 ranks. I need to finish this out on this guy. 96 ranks of this thing. But it increases your chance of performing a double attack by 24%, performing a one additional attack with your two-handed weapon when double attacking by 62%. You know, and then it's like 62%, 63%. All of this adds up so much. What's another one? Braxy's Howl. We talked about this earlier. You know, you want to max this as soon as possible, just because it increases the damage by a percentage, and that percentage increase as you go. That's super duper important. Now let's talk about the Daiko Dissident line. So if you remember earlier, I mentioned that I was going to explain why I'm doing TBL progression right now. And that's because if you look at my Dissident Rage, I only have Dissident Rage 2. I only had 1 as of yesterday, so all the other videos that I did that people are like, oh my god, your Berserkers are amazing. They're not, they're trash cans. We need to get more Dissident Rage leveled up. So to do this, I need to go and do the progression. You get these little lamps, you click the lamps, and it increases your ability. We put some smart stuff in Berserker that if you go and buy Dissident Rage, but you don't actually get the ability because DBG are incompetent, it spits out and says, hey, you have Rage, but you don't actually have the ability, so you're not using it. Go to the Sage dude in Stratos and go talk to him. We have that in the frequently asked questions in MQ2Berzerker to explain who to go to and what to do. So that's definitely something you want to look at. But this thing is your bread and butter. This is where your big damage, or one of the places where your big damage is coming from. It is an absolute game changer when you get to Daiko and Dissident. See, and if you see Daikotomic Rage 1, I didn't do any. Again, these dudes are new. They don't have any progression done from back then, so they don't have any increases on that. But you definitely want to spend some time and do the progression and get your Dissident Rage up so you can do all of the big damage. But I think I've kind of gone over some of the overview stuff that I wanted to talk about, some of the answers that I normally give when we talk about Berserkers in general. Again, keep in mind, it's a game of inches. It takes a while. Fortunately, Berserkers are pretty easy to max out AA. I think, looking at my list, I think max TOV AA is 41k. If you take out trade skills, it's like 37k. So Now, that looks crazy because if you look at my dudes, right, I don't have a lot of stuff left, or it doesn't feel like I have a lot of stuff left, but I still have 7,000 to get. So, you know, you can be doing pretty well. Like, I'd want to finish this up, increase damage, critical melee skills, you know, 250%, 255%, for all of your weapon skills. But again, it adds up. The auto grant, I forget what the number that it gives you, but it doesn't give you very much. Actually, we can see here. So auto grant is giving us what, like 12k AAs. So out the box, you're missing a whole lot of ranks for a whole lot of percentage based or base damage type stuff. And particularly when it comes to the focus tab, because focus starts in EOK, and well, actually, I mean, I guess it doesn't. It starts before EOK, but a bunch of like the you know, the big focus stuff starts in EOK. You don't get any ranks in that shit. You don't get no ranks in this stuff for free. So and these don't feel like they do something because they're not activated and they're just kind of passive. They don't feel like they're important, so they get neglected a lot. So don't neglect this focus tab. With my AA spend, I do a bank of 220, so I can personally spend if I see that, you know, they're high stuff, and then I go 5, 3, 2, 1, 4. And the bank at 220 will make it so you'll spend on your synergy first. But sometimes, you know, I may be saving up for synergy. I may check over and be like, I'm just gonna buy some stuff, get that little personal satisfaction of, oh, I spent some stuff and now I got some shit to do. But anyway, that's it. As you can see, their damage is pretty steady, pretty consistent. I mean, I'm killing light blues, so they might get lucky on one of these trash mobs and, you know, doing 1,000,000 in 4. I mean, these mobs are dying in 5 seconds, so it's literally not something I'm worrying about at all. Most of the stuff that I kill for current content dies very, very quickly too. Again, with this particular group, I was able to kill Gricklor in 1 drop at 110 with TOV tier 1 and heroic gear. But I had my Berserker epic. I had my focus. I had my Bard epic for the ADPS for the Berserkers. You know, I wasn't maxed AA for 110, but I had AAs spent in stuff that's going to give me damage. So between the damage from, you know, the SK, particularly with Harm Touch, the Zerkers, the Beast, and all the ADPS coming from the Bard and the Beast, able to 1-drop Gricklor at 110 is massive, absolutely massive. And it's a huge confidence boost when you can go in and just face roll stuff. And then that gives you the ability on a platform to sit on, so you can go and you can work on those games of inches. And things get better over time, but you have to spend some time and energy doing it. You know, like I mentioned before, I'm missing a ton of AUGs. Like this still has a 32 H-Dex AUG right here, no type 3 in this, and no type 7. He's got a bunch of empty ass slots that he's just missing stuff. Or like this, Draconic Celerity, 24 H-Dex. Like, that's crap. Like, I want that to be a 70 H-Dex, you know? But it takes time. Things get better over time. And yeah, anyway, so this was an overview of MQ2Berzerker, the options with it, and then just how to kind of, you know, get your Berserker in a position to be doing big dick Berserker shit. So I will talk to you all later.